Oh, welcome to the May 3rd edition of the Design Review podcast for Engineering Your Life. Today, my guest is Zachary Byrd. Welcome, Zachary.
Thank you for having me, Robert. It's good to be here.
You prefer to go by Zach? Should have asked you
Zach,
that.
Zach does work. Yeah.
Cool. Well, for like 40 years, I went as Rob and then went back to Robert and it messed people up quite a bit. But
Yeah.
that's its own story. Well, welcome to this. This is just going to be a convo. I'm going to do my best to ignore the fact that I have a microphone here.
Sir.
Um, and in design review, the whole point is that we're going to talk about something that you care about and that you're up to, and check in about how that's rolling. So, a lot of this is going to be kind of your perspective and what matters. If there's something in my life that is relevant, I may talk about it, or I may just spend the whole time listening. Um,
Yeah.
what I would like to get things started, if this was going to be a design review with somebody I was working with, I'd want to get some context, like, what is the problem to solve? What's the motivation, and kind of where you're at, and we'll just go from there. And if we stray from the path, that's part of the experience. So right now, it's kind of all yours. What is it you'd like to talk about today?
Yeah, brother. Thank you, Robert. If you're open to it, I'd like to start with something of an invocation. Something I like to call in the energy of the space, and really just set the tone. And I think this will be a good intro into some really cool stuff I've been working on that I'd love to share. If that's
I
okay
would
with you.
love that. That I am completely down with that. Have at it, sir.
Okay. Well, um, so I have, just to start, I have a coaching company called Kykeon Coaching, or Kukion Coaching. That is the sacred ritual drink that was drunk in Eleusis in ancient Greece. All of the founding fathers and predecessors and ancestors of the entire Western tradition participated in this sacred ritual to get in touch with the mystery. And so that's where the name Kykeon um, comes from. And so that's the container, and that's the energy that I come from in the way that I hold space is let's get to know the deepest possible thing. Let's go meet that so that we can connect with our meaning. And this is how I feel that and how I like to communicate that. And say this as an invitation um, and an invocation um, all at once to the one whose world just collapsed. If you're feeling like the ground has fallen out from under your feet, like the meaning that used to hold your life together has melted into mist, here's what I want you to know. You're not alone. You're not broken. And this isn't the end. What you're feeling is the source of meaning itself calling out from within you. The story that sustained you has crumbled because something truer wants to emerge. This is the beginning of the most important journey of your life, the one that leads not back to comfort, but forward into contact, not back to certainty, but toward a new kind of soul-born stability, a life where you experience all that you're capable of experiencing. There is ground to stand on. There is meaning, and you contain everything you need to meet it. Keep going. You're on the right path. You're already home.
Thank you for that. That that touched me in many ways, sir. And just a comment that if you're on this podcast, it means that there's something deep within you that resonated with me.
Yeah.
And so it's not super surprising, also including how I know you, that there's alignment there. So I love that. So thank you.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for this space. And right there with you, brother. There's big resonance. But you asked me a question, which is what's something I've been working on, and something I've been working on is crafting this space. And some of the and to build up tools to I'm a big proponent. I love one of my passions is creating tools to facilitate people to do things in general. In my corporate career, it was always, and as I was leading teams, I always wanted to be able to tell people, here's the vision, here's where we're going, and here's the tool to get you there. Here's how you be really impactful in meetings, and here's how you can check that. Here's some psychological mechanisms you can learn, kind of thing. Here's some ways to track your metrics. Here's how to take those metrics you're tracking and turn them into actions. and very tactical tools to do that. And so in this soul work, in this individuation work, one thing that has come through for me is what I call the Tesseract model. Um, there's two pieces to it. There's the model itself, the Tesseract model, and we can kind of get into that. But then there's also the aliveness assessment, which is the way to track the metrics and the way to kind of get tactical, practical about it. And so, what the Tesseract model is if you've ever seen a Tesseract, which you can't really see them because they're a fourth dimensional structure, where in 3 dimensions we have up, down, left, right, in depth, and in the fourth dimension you add another dimension, another axis, which I'm not going to pretend to be able to explain that. But when you look at, and so when you're thinking, when you want to visually represent fourth dimensional shapes or objects in 3 dimensions, you make sort of a projection. And there's this really cool one of a tesseract, which is it's called a hypercube, um, which is you can picture 8 dots with 8 more dots, and then 4 lines connecting each of the dots. So you have basically these like interlinked stars. It's really cool looking. And in that image, that's what the tesseract is geometrically. I kind of didn't start with the geometric piece of this. I started with let me say what it is first. The Tesseract model is a way of understanding the energy that flows in us. I call it aliveness or flow. Um, that's how it speaks to me. And the way that it goes about this is by each of the 8 nodes. There's 16, but it's 8 squared. And is an aspect of life. So there are 8 aspects, which are mindfulness, inner work, initiation and ecstasis, awe and curiosity, nature, physicality, embodiment, communitas, and whole self coherence. Um, and so the idea is that there are these 8 dimensions of aliveness, or of the human experience, let's say, or life,
Mhm.
that if we're like engaged in their cultivation in a holistic enough way, um, or in a holistic way, we get the reward, the result of that is increased states of aliveness and increased throughput of aliveness just in our lives. And so, yeah, that's the Tesseract model. And the aliveness assessment is a way to assess that. So you can kind of check in and be like, okay, which areas need some help? Where am I thriving? And see how they're connected.
Well, cool. There's a whole lot I want to ask around this. So, um, I'm particularly curious about a lot of aspects of that, the model, its nodes and what motivated them. But can we like take a step back about like, why does this matter to you? What life experience or what are you working on in the world such that this shows up as an answer? What's the question that this is the answer to?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mission is to discover the truth within myself so that I may facilitate others discovering that they too contain it. Um, and so to me, that's just an infinite question. The Because how and why and when and like how do I do that more and how do I be that? And so in the pursuit of answering that question, to me that means when I think about discovering the truth within myself, what that means to me is back to Kukion or Kykeon, the name of my coaching company, is it isn't encountering the mystery is it's kind of a paradox, right? It is you encounter the mystery, it doesn't become less mysterious. It doesn't not become not a mystery. You can't solve it or diagram it. It's still a mystery, right? But you can encounter it.
Okay.
And so to me, encountering like discovering the truth within myself is being, I would say, like in right relationship or being in healthy dynamic with the mystery, which and I think what that means is to me, it all really boils down to like some kind of pseudo logic was that I'm alive and that must be the point. Like I can't really I can speak ontologically and have, different structures and frameworks, but when it really boils down to it, what it feels like is that when I am truly present, when I'm truly here, that's the best feeling I've ever had, period. And so that's in it, and really all questions go away.
Mhm.
Um, and there's nothing to solve, and there's nothing to think about. It's just a feeling. It's just pure being. And so the question is, if that's the case, Ram Dass famously talked about, paraphrase here, but he was like, I did a lot of mushrooms because I wanted to, I wanted to get high, and he said, but the problem was I kept coming down, and so that's why I went to India. That's why I went to go meet Maharishi to figure out how I could stay high all the time,
Mhm.
And I'm with Ram Dass because, and that's the question I'm answering. I feel like is how do I make that state of being, which is the discovery of the truth within me, um, how do I make that all the time? How do I make that my life? How do I make that the place where I'm expressing and interacting from instead of the place I'm trying to get to? And because I want to be able to express that in such a way that others can have that same experience, because I really think it's accessible to all of us.
Cool. Well, is this a new pursuit for you, or has this been more like a lifelong awareness that has brought this into play?
Yeah, it's definitely not a new pursuit. I would say back in 2000, I was in a drunk driving accident over a decade ago, and just a really wild 10-year long legal journey with that. And at the beginning of it, back in 2014, there was a moment at which, whatever, by the grace of God, by the grace of whatever, I had this knowing. I was like, I have to change my entire life or it's
Mm.
over. This is it. Like and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, I didn't have any answers. I just knew it needed to happen. And I proceeded to, I don't know how I knew about this, but there's like a sort of, there's a religion philosophy called Jainism, sort of
Mhm.
parallel to Buddhism. And the, and so I became a Jain. I took the vows of a Jain, of a layperson Jain, so
Mhm.
out of the blue, and then proceeded on this journey to, and then I had, I've had physical challenges. I've had, I've herniated two discs in my back as someone who's pretty athletic. That was pretty catastrophic for me. And so I've had just I've been blessed with these really insanely intense external challenges that have really just continuously forced me inwards. Where, I really had to get in touch with my capability to choose my relationship to the external and choose to be fulfilled and find that meaning within myself. So it's been a long journey. Filled with lots of ups and downs. And I think, in the more, maybe the latter half or recent parts of that, it's been a lot of really getting to the mythological, archetypal, symbolic level where I've really come to terms and realized that a lot of those inflection points were myths dying. Like these worldviews that I've had where I was a, whatever, teenager, rebellious teenager, and I got on probation. That myth died. It exploded. It
Mhm.
crumbled. It could not hold water anymore.
Yeah.
And I went into the wasteland and I had to discover a new one and craft a new myth. And a lot of that was taking on other people's myths, right? And so at that, for the first part of that, I was, reading self-help and doing, finding courses and doing different things and being like, oh yeah, I'm that, I'm this, I'm not. And they were, those were phenomenal ways to be compared
Uh-huh.
to, they pulled me out of a lot of things, gave me a lot of tools.
Mhm.
And then, there was moving forward, there was, relationships ending, there was, at one point I was in a relationship, a romantic relationship, and that ended. It coincided with me. I had another moment where my myth just exploded, and I realized, oh, like I'm living in the pattern of my forefathers. Like I'm living like my forefathers, literally fathers, like my father, his father, have had a dream, a myth, a worldview that said this is what the goal of life is, and I was living that. And there's nothing wrong with that, what their worldview, and it wasn't mine. And when I
Mm,
realized that, when my body realized it, when it landed in me, my world shattered. And I was like, I don't know how to relate. I don't know how to wake up in the morning and brush my teeth anymore because I was doing that as someone else, but I didn't know it. And so, and so there was these series of things that were deepening. And so coming out of that, I needed to then go reconstruct and figure out that was another level, right? Where I was like, oh, it seems like other people were living through me. Like really, like I've heard that before, right? That you live
mm,
you live your patterns of programming, but I feel this like viscerally. And so then I went on a mission and I was like, I'm gonna figure out every single pattern that's fucking
mhm.
taken me over, and I'm going to compassionately, detach from that, because it served me and I'm grateful for it. And it's not who I want to be. And maybe parts of it are, and I'll take those with me, but I want to craft my own myth here. Yeah. And then further on, there was another period in my life where I thought that I knew exactly what my myth was. I thought that I was living it. I thought that I was going to be married, and I thought that I was going to be working a certain kind of job, and it was going to be in a certain town, and then that ended the other way. That was ended from the other direction, and that circumstance, that relationship, and it's really powerful. The endings and beginnings of relationships as these inflection points for reconsidering how you relate to things, but that really broke me open in a really powerful way, which then was another sort of meta level, which was I actually don't want to build another myth and step inside of it at all, ever. But I do want to be able to inhabit the wasteland. And big credit to Eric Godsey for this kind of concept. He talks a lot about this in his Horizon series. It's a podcast and article series, um, but yeah, he talks about becoming a thrice-born artist or a thrice-born human, which means that you've had, and it could be multiple, it could be 25 or 100 myths, but you've had at least three myths die that have happened in awareness. And what you get out of that, if that you hold that in awareness and you kind of step through these levels, and what I've experienced is that you come out and you realize, oh, yeah, I would love to participate with people in their worldviews, and I'm most comfortable, and I seek and I crave the in between, because that's where the creativity is, and that's where my true self lies, is in the bare, in the whirlwind of the in between.
Wow. A lot of resonance with your story. And I mean, in particular, one of the things that stood out is that you talked about like the blessings um, that many people might not perceive as blessings, but points in your life that have like brought intense. He's called them inflection points, but where curvature went one way, and all of a sudden, like because of this event, now it's going in another direction. And I've had a few myself, so there's like a lot of resonance with that life experience. And it sounds when you're talking about not wanting to like live into a given adopted myth, that you're looking for like the space that in which to see and create self. Maybe sounds a little bit like the gap or other terminology for it, but is I know this is going to like tie back into where Tesseract comes from as a solution. Um, but if you're not seeking out existing mechanisms and explanations, are you then going within to find truth that's yours, or are you
Yeah.
going to a teaching that deals with that perspective? I know that you're going to bridge your origin story to the project, and so I'm kind of interested in where does that flow? Where are the connections? What is being created? What is being discovered? What is being revealed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in terms of what I'm drawn to now in terms of modalities, frameworks versus like maybe gnosis, internal experience kind of thing is I mean, I love um Aldous Huxley talked about the perennial philosophy, and the idea there is that almost every world culture, religion, spiritual practice, spiritual lineage, um, back through all of time, back to cave art, like it seems like has some common threads. And
Uh-huh.
and those common threads are illustrating that there is a universal endeavor, that there is a universal thing that we're all a part of as humans, right?
Yeah.
And I like the word spirituality. It's got a lot of interesting
Uh-huh.
currents running through it nowadays. But to me, spirituality is about relationship. And how I think about that is that we, as subjective monads, like we are these, we're a subject, right? Looking out at the world, looking inwards at our inner world, and so we have two directions of relationship, right? Outwards and inwards.
Uh-huh.
And inwards, it's like, obviously physical, your thoughts, your body, that kind of thing. But then also like, your feelings, your emotions, your connection to your soul, like your connection to unconscious and the deeper collective unconscious. And then you go outwards, right? To the walls in front of me, this video, right? Then I see in the video, I see you, right? So we have a relationship, but then it goes to, city, state, country, earth, universe, cosmos, being. So there's all these levels of relationship. And so spirituality to me is the it's it's something, it's like air. Like we're born
Yeah.
as practicing spirituality, and what it is the cultivation of the act of engaging in conscious cultivation of those relationships
Okay.
at any slash all levels. Yeah, and so that's kind of how I think about and yeah, so I do think that there are frameworks. So that like the perennial philosophy, that's spirituality, and what that leads me to, and what's really powerful in my work and my journey, currently is that there are frameworks. I think like Jungian analysis, um, different like tantric practices, like Kashmiri Shaivism. It's not really a practice, but the lineage there and the philosophy there. That are kind of really tactical, practical on how do you get kind of down to that root of being and how do you cultivate those relationships as directly as possible. And that's the point. And there isn't a goal. It's just like do this because that's what life is. And encounter the mystery. And so I think there are definitely frameworks, and I'll never not engage with
Mhm.
like I think that's also the thing about that I love about again, Eric Godsey calls this mythic play, but that's kind of when you have your thrice born from your myth dying, you gain this capacity for mythic play and stepping into, going to a Christian church and worshiping. Like, let's do that. Let's worship. Let's go to the Amitabha Peace Park, the Buddhist outdoor temple in Sedona, and
Oh, yeah.
and let's do some prayer walks around the stupa and do some compassion, some meta loving kindness. And so I do think there's power in all of those things and being able to connect with them all because they're all part of the same endeavor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I think the Tesseract and how this all kind of pulls back is I personally I really like I said I enjoy creating tools. It's really one of my great passions is synthesis and really taking in a bunch of these different practices, modalities, everything, and really getting to know them, really practicing them, really learning about them, and honoring those lineages and getting to meet the teachers, and and then saying what does this mean to me, and how do I use this, because one person saying it is going to be different than how it feels to me. And so like yeah, so Tesseract is kind of that. I would say it comes out of a practical mysticism. Like it came to me via I was in a ketamine therapy session with a wonderful therapist up in Sedona, and not he, and I had this experience. It was really fascinating. That trip was a whole thing, and a whole journey. But one part of it, I saw this like what looked like like an easy button that you slap. That was easy. That was
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, yeah.
I saw something like a button. Um, that's a
Okay.
good image in my head. Something like a button that was at the core of my being, and it could be pressed. And I had no, it didn't, I was like, okay, that's a beautiful vision. You know, like I had no somatic relationship to it. It didn't really like trigger anything. It just felt like important but I didn't have any context for it or anything. And so talked about it with my therapist and he was like, that's interesting, you know, great, sit with it. If it doesn't mean anything to you right now, sit with it. So I did,
Yeah.
sat with it, and then I had an experience a few weeks later. I was down in Phoenix at my brother's house, and he has a beautiful backyard where he's cleared. If you've ever, I know you live down here.
Yeah.
If anyone else hasn't been to Phoenix, it's all rocks in the backyards,
Yeah.
which always confuses me because I'm like, there's this beautiful red earth that's wonderful to walk on. Why would you put rocks on it? Um, uh, but my brother he always clears out the backyard of the rocks, which I'm like, that touches me so deeply.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if he does that for me or for him, but we can actually use his backyard. It's wonderful. So I was out in the backyard and I got a little workout in, and I was doing just some of my practices, you know, some of these practices that we'll talk about in the Tesseract system. But I was doing, you know, some grounding. I did a little workout. I was doing some kind of intuitive, like almost qigong type movement. I was doing some humming meditation, and I was singing a little bit and doing a little bit of dancing. I don't know. It was just like a flowy morning. I was just, I think I came down the night before, and I was just really glad to be on that land and wanted to wake up with the sun and do that. And it was a slow Saturday, and so I was just kind of like reveling in my body and that experience. And at the end of that, I had shoes on for most of the practice. And then at the end of it, I just had this big message from inside of me like come up, and it was like, take your fucking shoes off, get on the ground. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, sorry. Yeah, hell yeah. Um, Forgot that one. And so I took my shoes off, stepped on the ground. It was like 10 trillion pounds of things. This is exactly what I experienced. I was like, it felt like 10 trillion pounds of things that I was carrying that weren't mine to carry. They were just on my shoulders, and I don't even know what they were, but just like all sorts of shit. Um, just I experienced that it flowed off my shoulders into the earth where it should have been in the first place.
Mm.
Um, and in that moment, it was like I like closed my eyes and felt the sun on my face, and it was like this eight-sided, I could see this eight-sided button was at the time I didn't have any name for it or anything. It was just an eight-sided button inside of me, and I saw it press, and I saw the energy centers around it, and I could see, and I was feeling this in my body too. It wasn't just a vision. It was like this. I was seeing what was happening inside me, and so I had this like interesting perspective shift where I could see everything that I'd done, you know, that day and the preceding weeks, the community, the mindfulness, you know, the movement I'd done that day, all of these different practices consistently, you know, that I cultivate. And I had this state of just extraordinary presence and activation. And I felt you know, so alive. And so it was this beautiful experience. And I was like, oh, okay. This button is sort of like the juncture point in like Chinese medicine or other energy. This would be like the Tandian, like the energy center where the masculine and feminine sort of combine down here in the sacral Manipura chakra area. And it's so it's I think parallel to those concepts. But this is how it feels to me, right? So this is not this is just how it feels to me. And I was like, oh, this is where all of these energy lines in my body or in my being, I guess it's not really limited to my physical body, but to me as an energetic being sort of meets. And the depression of the button is the activation of the Tesseract. It's like this thing that like so like the image of the Tesseract actually moves like this. Like
Mhm.
the nodes sort of move around each other because it's
Yeah.
in four dimensions. You can't really, it's not static as we think about it.
Mhm.
Um, and so the button depressing was like the activation, the blossoming of the Tesseract. And the practice, how I think about that is that the practices are sort of like the internal or the external impetus or force or interface with the internal states of being for each node. And so that's how we sort of interface with it and can achieve more of that aliveness.
Cool. Well, that's a fascinating mystical experience that brought this awareness into being, and also Like everything else we've talked about so far, there's a lot of resonance there with some personal experience that I've had that have kind of guided me along on my mission. So let's kind of like dive into. It sounds like it's like discovery of self, lowercase, maybe uppercase, probably both, self through a methodology represented by the Tesseract, where each of the nodes of the eight nodes of that represent an area of practice or an area of application. Is that is that a description of that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the one important thing that I like to keep in mind is that when I first came across this, when this first, because I really, this was just, this arose in me, this was given to me. It is a synthesis of a lot of things, right? Like I talked about Chinese medicine and the chakra system and all these things. So like full credit to those lineages for their particular,
Sure,
illustrations of and elucidations of these processes.
sure.
For me, this arose in me, and at first, I was like, "Oh, this solves everything. This is the answer I've been looking for." And then inevitably, I was like, as I worked with it in practice and asked a lot of questions and really was open, I had a lot of time in the mountains in northern Arizona, just asking questions of the universe, of my soul, and just about what is this? What is it for? Who is this for? What does it do? And obviously, there's a lot there, but one thing that really came through strongly is like the reason that I have an aliveness assessment for this is because that's what it's for. This is to check and feel how you doing.
Okay.
Like if the point of life is is to be right, and aliveness is sort of like and maybe a symptom of being
Sure.
more or being fully your
Sure.
degree of being, if you will, which is kind of
Sure.
an oxymoron, but um this is wrapped in, so there's probably two things here. It's wrapped in this is a component of my coaching offering. And my coaching offering primarily works with Jungian methodology, so shadow work, dream work, some somatic practices, and this Tesseract and aliveness system, because this is a check-in, right? This is what you get to celebrate. As you're doing the internal work. And it's not necessarily a goal or the path itself. And so that's
Yeah.
just one thing for context. I will say, but to answer your question more specifically, the different nodes, right? So like in the mindfulness node, right, there would be there's probably an infinite number of practices in the world that have to do with mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
The ones I know about are like are Vipassana meditation. So in the West is called like mindfulness meditation, or clear sight meditation. It's called different things, but that is a practice that I practice that helps me activate my aliveness from that
Yeah.
mindfulness node, right? And so how I kind of what I provide with this framework to for people is you have a way to assess it, right? So you check in, you can do this over and over. It's like a personality test. This is
Yeah.
dynamic. You can every minute's going to be different.
Yes.
Um, and so it's like real time feedback. Um, and then you have supportive practices, right? So it's like, okay, I can check in where I'm at. And the cool thing is that for each one, so like inner work is so we have mindfulness, like inner work, initiation, ecstasis, right? And so like you can kind of draw a line. So mindfulness is going to be like Vipassana and, walking meditation or something. Inner work is going to be shadow work. It's going to be therapy, maybe. It's going to be, you know, um, creative expression, art therapy, like different things where you're getting in touch with what's inside of you.
Mhm.
And so that one kind of transcends both levels. Right? That's part of the container as well.
Yeah.
But specific in the Tesseract, right? You have some practices that can support this, and so I provide sort of those practices to people, not as here's the only way to get mindful, or not here's the only way to do this. It's like here's the ones I have experience with. We can go deep on them if they resonate. If they don't, here's some other people resources. Like there's
Sure.
an infinite number of each of these things. Um, yeah, and so that's how I think about the practices, supported practices. And so the idea is that, like there's this Zen saying, like before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Um, and to me, what that speaks about is that, like, again, the point is to life, is to live. Um, So I've already won, you know, like, and so the more I can feel that, the better, because it just, yeah. And it means that practice facilitates like presence and facilitates, the access to those states of being, right? And so yeah, it's about giving, practices that it's about weaving, it's about making, for me, it's about making my entire life a sequence of practices, um, that cultivate aliveness, which from a Western tech, American productivity, efficiency mindset sounds fucking horrible. Or it sounds great from that mindset because it sounds like all the rest of it. But if you tried to do it from that direction, it would feel horrible, which I have done. I've tried to make the diagrams and the charts and the checklists and the things for all my practices and didn't feel alive. I felt the opposite. And not to say that those things can't be helpful, right? But to approach it from that mindset. And so I just want to be clear that what I mean when I say that is that this conversation is a practice right now.
Yes.
Right now, I am feeling you and you're feeling me, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm intentionally cultivating this relationship. So we're in spiritual relation, or we're practicing spirituality,
Absolutely.
and we're both trying to get to know each other. We're both trying to spread the message that we each believe in, right? Which has to do with empowering ourselves and each other and, you know, lives, right? And so that's what life as a practice means to me. And so, how in each of these domains can I acquire from someone else, mystically encounter, like however I get it, find some practice that works for me, that allows me to live as that practice, and in that practice, in some sequence, continuously, to cultivate the state of aliveness.
Love that. That's great. You know, and one of the things about life from my perspective is accepting it as it shows up tends to be one of my routes to aliveness. So I'll inject something that may or may not
Mm.
resonate, but who knows? I kind of view vitality, my one of the words I use for aliveness, as sort of an inherent thing that I can block. And one of the things I try to do is to not do that, or to release the blockages that I have, to release the barriers that I have towards having life flow through me fully. Um,
Mm.
and one of the ways that there is for me to do that is to not be attached to how things look like. I think that's a Buddhist concept of non-attachment, which includes embracing well, all aspects of life, video included. Um, so if we got to now to have the story about where this came from and how your life arrived at this solution, where are you now? What is the process, or what is going on right now with Tesseract? Is it you're using it in your coaching practice now? What
Yeah.
is
So
what does it look like today?
yeah, today, I've continued to sit with it. I think, you know, in the recent past, it's been through several iterations. I initially did start using it with a client, and it was going to be a sort of a cohort-based course, and I was testing it with him to see if, how that felt, and it didn't feel right. It felt like, yeah, honestly, it felt like I was too much involved in it.
Um,
Because the Tesseract to me is like it's like a personality test, except it's not static like that. But it's like a tool you use to just get in touch with these things and here's supportive practices. And yes, I'm happy to share my experience and input and whatever on how to do those things and how they've impacted me. And it
sure.
doesn't feel like, that needs to be the point. Um, I think this is
Okay.
just a supportive tool for people. So right now it's evolving into an offering that I can just provide to people. So I'm working on packaging that right now as a part of my coaching packages. Yeah, so it's sort of in a transition right now. It was going to be this huge thing, and then I started testing it out with a few people, and it was like, okay, this is not that big a deal, which was great because like, yeah, and again, this goes back to when I thought like, okay, this seems like it'll solve every problem, like that, yada yada. I got excited about it, and Not that I'm not excited about it now. I'm probably more excited about it now, but excited about it for what it is instead of what I think it could be. Now I know it. And what I know it as is as a, supportive tool, a framework for understanding and getting in touch with different practices, with some examples and experience and stuff, but not the end all be all, because ultimately the end all be all is the journey each of us are on. And so like in that coaching environment is like, um, are you going inwards? Let's go inwards together. How can we help each other go inwards, and cultivate that relationship with self and that relationship with being? Yeah, so that's where it's at right now.
I I appreciate that. I also appreciate that you're putting it to use, not trying to have it be all perfect, not to have like 3 books written about it before you like bring it out into the world. But I love that intentional learning from it about and also there's like a whole bunch of like discovery involved here. This isn't like, oh, okay, I've like studied this for 10 years and pulled somebody else's tool out to go use it. This is like being revealed to you as you go. And there's something really fascinating and adventurous about that process for me. And so I love that that's what's going on now. Back kind of hearkening to the days where I was doing technology management and product development work. You take your idea, which is a solution to an issue, and it sounds like this is tool for evaluation of instantaneous, more or less, state of aliveness for a being, a conscious being that has a different, eight parameters, maybe more. They're connected and overlap in whatever ways that they are, that you can use as an assessment that guides, well, now what? Now that we kind of see where you are or how balanced you are or how strong you are in others or whatever, where you have areas you could improve or capitalize on. Now you can use this as a basis for work. Great. I mean, honestly, one of the other things from my past is, you can't improve what you can't measure. I spent 25 years in metrology, so that was a thing.
Yeah.
So this gives you a way to have access to it. And you said that it harkens from other sources of wisdom. And we talked about, you mentioned the collective unconscious, probably not a bad time to mention that one of the reasons that I know you is that we're collectively in a program studying Jungian life coaching, and collective unconscious is a huge chunk of what we have access to. And that's a new concept for me, but it speaks so powerfully and it makes the process you've gone through make a lot of sense to me. That it comes through multiple sources or channels also makes sense. So, and you're using this and trying out and finding out where it goes with people. So what's kind of the future of this approach for you? What are the next steps, or what do you see as maybe a year from now or a couple of years from now? How does this sit? Where does this
Yeah.
fit in your tool belt and things?
Yeah, I'm really interested right now and I really appreciate the reflection about like this being a discovery process, and it's like an adventure and stuff, because it really is like, and it really is. Of course I contribute, and of course this is how it works for me, and this really is, I am receiving it. That's been my experience, and so it really is like, okay, let me see if this works, and if it doesn't work, I must not be doing it right. So I got to figure out how it's supposed to work. Like, and that's not, and so yeah, I see that right now. I'm in the midst of crafting with some co-creators, some in-person workshops and some webinars and some different things, because I want to see, again, in kind of a mode of discovery, how does this work best? Where does this actually fit? Is this a primary, pillar? Is this a and like what modalities does this pair with? And like specifically, like I'm doing like a qigong and shadow work workshops series here in the next month in Phoenix, and so I'm really looking forward to that, to feel into does the Tesseract aliveness model. I think what I'm going to do at first is offer that to people to see what they do with it, and be like, hey, we'll do some shadow work and qigong, and if they like that, great. I'm excited for that. Couldn't imagine a better pairing of modalities, and just offer this to people as here's the tool you can have. Let me know how this impacts you, um yeah, because I really just want to see, it really is a resource. I feel like that just benefits. It's just a bump up. Like it just helps. Like who wouldn't want to know if how alive you're feeling, like, and what you can do about it and be practical about that. A lot of the new age spiritual stuff is, and even the old age religious stuff, right, is, um certainly all the experiential stuff is wrapped in esoteric language, and it's got, um and that's it for a reason a lot of the times, and so I'm not denigrating that. I appreciate the esoteric language.
Oh, yeah.
um and it's like, okay, what the fuck do I do with this? What do I do with this? I want to feel this
Exactly.
way right now. Like, what do I do, you know and especially in our modern culture, when we have pills and when we have quick fixes and when everybody's selling a quick fix. I'm not gonna. This isn't a quick fix. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is it is a quick window into where you're at, and then gives everyone the opportunity to quickly take responsibility for, and be empowered, knowing, that they can change how they feel to increase their state of aliveness, to get that feeling that is sort of that root feeling that increases our, the joy of living. Yeah, and so right now it's just, it's going to come up in a lot of different settings. I have another, a webinar series that I'm crafting right now too, which is with another co-creator, who works with somatics, works with mindset, works with, a lot of like, nervous system, regulation modalities, and so I'm looking to combine it with that as well. Yeah, and so I really just want to know, how can this medicine best be received? Like, what container is best for it? Is this something, we just give away to every single person we ever meet? Is this something that, no one will kind of know what it's about unless it's paired with qigong or like, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, yeah, experimentation station right now.
I love that. And actually we're kind of now able to the point, during this particular episode where we're going to kind of pull this all together, because that's really brought us full circle. So if anybody's like watching this that's interested in learning more, or are there is there a request? Are there people that you would love to partner with, or that might be interested in like trying on the assessment so that you can both learn about something? Is there an opportunity for people that are hooked already and are interested in learning more? Is there a way for people to reach out to you, or who are you looking for, if anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I work with seekers who are, really sick of having a bunch of insight without change. I mean, to put it really point blank. I've had been on a ton of retreats. I've met ton of spiritual people. I've all amazing, amazing retreats, amazing people, amazing practitioners, and my life was the same. I didn't feel any different about it. I may have even had a practice after that, and it wasn't substantially different. My experience of my life wasn't substantially different. And so I was left with the question, why hasn't my life changed? Why don't I feel any different? And so I would say, if you feel like that, I would love to talk to you, because, the shadow work, the dream work, the getting to know, that you go to sleep every night and receive messages from the universe, from the collective unconscious, from these pieces of you that touch everything, telling you where you've been, how you're doing, where you're going, is it working, what the future holds,
Yeah.
and that it's possible to go inside yourself and notice that there are opposites. There are things that you're in polarity about inside of you, and if you get to know them, then you're not anymore. And that means you're in a deeper relationship with yourself and all that is. And as you do that, you become more alive and understand your purpose and meaning. Um, if that sounds interesting, and if you've encountered those problems, that's who I like to work with. That's the mission I'm on. And if people are on that mission too, yeah, you can find me on Instagram at I am Zachary Byrd, and I'm on LinkedIn at Zachary Byrd. So, I've got all my stuff there. And if you're interested, particularly in the Tesseract, I would say hit me up on one of those platforms. Let's chat. We can, chat via DMs. I'm happy to send you the assessment. It's completely free. If we can talk about it, if you want to schedule a call after that to talk about it, we can.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we have links to all of those available in every place that we distribute this podcast, so that people have a chance to get the information that they need to do that. Anything else that you'd like to have known while before we bring this to a close?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would just like have it known that I'm super grateful to know you, Robert, and to get to participate with you. I've had a great time talking to you. Um, yeah, man. And I guess I would just like it to be known that I'm just super grateful. It's such a blessing. I've had a lot of, a lot of blessings in my journey um, to be able to give back and express that there is hope and that there is meaning and purpose in life, and being able to provide that for myself and for others is such a blessing. And I'm just super grateful. Yeah. Um, yeah, like I started with, you're already home. That's uh that's the point. You made it. You did it. And if anybody's curious about what that means for you right now and how that can be practical and not just some words you're hearing, that's what this work is about. So yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
awesome. Well, thank you, Zachary Byrd. Individuation coach is now where your headline is, and I love it. It has been really an honor to be able to talk to you about what you care about and to hear the story and the vulnerability. I'm interested personally in going through this assessment, if you'd be willing to take me through that, because I always want to learn more about where I'm at. And honestly, I felt a little out of balance in my life lately, and I love being able to kind of like see whatever see means, where I'm at. So I have a feeling that there would be some value on that. So maybe we kind of chat about what that looks like separately. But thank you for your time. Thank you for honoring me with your presence. And I'm really enjoying continuing to get to know you better and watch what you're up to. And I have the privilege of being able to watch you from a couple of different perspectives, which is just all that much more of a joy. So thanks again. Thanks, Zachary. And I appreciate your part of this program.
Yeah, likewise, Robert. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.